Have you ever found yourself completely exhausted after a simple day of social interaction, feeling like you carry a massive, invisible weight that you can't quite explain to anyone? You sit in your room looking out the window, loving humanity from a distance, yet feeling a desperate physical need to hide from it. For the INFJ, often recognized as the world's rarest personality type, certain everyday behaviors are frequently dismissed by society as simple quirks, antisocial tendencies, or introverted eccentricities. You've probably been told you're too sensitive, too quiet, or overthinking things. But deep clinical psychology and neuroscience reveal a different, far more profound truth. These are not just casual habits. They are the silent, protective footprints of traumatic intelligence, a rare form of cognitive genius that wasn't born in a comfortable classroom, but was carefully forged in the fires of childhood to survive an unpredictable world. If you are an INFJ, everyday occurrences secretly overwhelm your nervous system in ways those around you will never comprehend. Today, we are going to expose 6 seemingly normal yet deeply misunderstood habits of the INFJ. These behaviors actually reveal a mind running a hyper-vigilant, chaotic supercomputer that never truly powers down. Habit number 1: the amnesia of names and the memory of the soul. An INFJ can meet someone, shake their hand, and completely forget their name within 3 seconds of the introduction. To the outside world, this looks like a lack of interest, arrogance, or simple forgetfulness. But the neurobiological reality is the exact opposite. While the other person is speaking their name, the INFJ's mind is violently occupied with an unconscious process scientists call predictive processing. The INFJ is running a chaotic internal processor at maximum capacity. Instead of listening to the phonetic sound of a name, they are scanning the person's tone of voice, analyzing the microscopic shifts in their facial muscles, assessing their baseline emotional state, and instinctively detecting any hidden motives or buried traumas. Because the INFJ feels everything so deeply, their brain simply has no RAM left for superficial labels. They bypass the ego's name tag entirely to catalog the emotional truth of who you are. They may not recall your name the next day, but they will remember the exact subtle trace of sadness in your eyes, the precise rhythm of your breathing, and the specific frequency of your energy 10 years later. Habit number 2: the feeling that physical clutter is a personal psychological attack. For most people, a messy room, unwashed dishes, or a cluttered workspace is simply an inconvenience, a chore to be dealt with later. For an INFJ, physical disorganization triggers an immediate, visceral sense of exhaustion and mental paralysis. Because the INFJ's mind spends every waking moment absorbing the external emotional chaos of the world around them, their internal processor is constantly running red hot. They do not think in straight logical lines. They think in vast, invisible, interconnected patterns. Every object in a room carries an energetic weight. When their physical environment is cluttered, it introduces a massive influx of chaotic visual data. Their brain processes every misplaced item as an unresolved task screaming for attention. To survive the sensory overload of human interaction, the INFJ requires external physical order as a baseline to maintain their internal peace. A clean, quiet, minimalist space is not an aesthetic preference. It is a clinical necessity for their nervous system to regulate and cool down. Habit number 3: the silent dread of the birthday. If you look at the calendar of an INFJ, you will often find they quietly ignore their own birthday, treating it with a sense of deliberate detachment. They might even hide the date on the social media to prevent notifications from triggering a flood of messages. This behavior is deeply misunderstood by friends and family as coldness, depression, or self-pity. but it is actually a highly logical protective response to a lifelong feeling of being fundamentally different. Throughout their lives, INFJs carry the heavy burden of intense empathy, constantly managing, absorbing, and regulating the emotions of everyone else. On a birthday, the social spotlight is abruptly turned on to them. Suddenly, they are expected to receive attention, and, more exhaustingly, they are expected to react in performative ways that satisfy the expectations of the gift givers. Because praise can feel like a trap, and attention quickly turns into a demand for an emotional reaction, the INFJ prefers the comfort of obscurity. They choose to spend the day in quiet reflection, protecting their fragile energy from the exhausting theater of social celebration. Habit number 4. The art of the retreat, or quietly suffering in silence. When an INFJ is hurting, they do not scream, they do not make demands, and they rarely seek comfort from others. Instead, they enter what is psychologically known as monk mode. They pull back, retreat into their safe space, lock the door, and essentially disappear from the grid. This habit of suffering in silence is often mistaken for pride, stubbornness, or emotional detachment, but the truth is much darker and far more heartbreaking. INFJs are natural, magnetic caretakers. Strangers on the bus, children, and animals instinctively trust them and pour out their deepest traumas to them within minutes. However, because they have spent a lifetime being the unbreakable emotional pillar for everyone else, they carry a silent, deeply ingrained belief that their own vulnerabilities are simply too dark and too heavy for others to bear. They would rather retreat into a protective cocoon, wrapping themselves in absolute isolation to bleed and heal their wounds alone, rather than risk becoming a burden to the fragile people they love. Habit number 5. The insomnia of the owl's vigil. While the rest of the world is peacefully asleep, the INFJ's mind is often wide awake, locked in a state of high cognitive arousal at 3 a.m. They are cursed to repeatedly re-evaluate every dialogue of the day, dissecting every word spoken, every slight shift in tone of voice, and every micro-expression observed during a seemingly normal conversation. This midnight analysis is not a lack of discipline. It is an involuntary biological search for psychological safety. Because the INFJ is highly sensitive, any unresolved emotional tension or ambiguous interaction is flagged by their amygdala as a potential threat to their peace. To cope with this late-night cognitive storm, many INFJs rely on an unusual physical habit. They find it nearly impossible to sleep without a heavy blanket, even on the hottest summer nights. The weight of the blanket provides what clinical psychology calls deep pressure therapy. It stimulates the parasympathetic nervous system, simulating the absolute safety of a physical embrace, and finally, signaling to their hyperactive brain that the radar can be turned off. Habit number 6. Extreme visceral discomfort with unexpected guests. To most extroverted types, a surprise knock on the front door is a pleasant social opportunity. But for an INFJ, an unannounced visitor can trigger a genuine physiological fight-or-flight response. Your heart rate spikes, your breathing shallows, and you might even pretend you aren't home. An INFJ's home is not just a physical structure of bricks and wood. It is their ultimate psychological sanctuary. It is the only place on earth where they can let down their heavy armor and completely stop analyzing the emotional landscape of others. Because their daily life outside is spent in a state of constant social hyper-reactivity, they must mentally prepare themselves, often hours in advance, before entering any social arena. An unexpected guest violently violates this sacred boundary. It forces the INFJ to immediately reactivate their protective armor without the necessary warning or mental preparation. Their sudden panic, is not rudeness or antisocial behavior. It is a desperate, instinctual attempt to protect the sacred integrity of their only healing space. Why does the INFJ mind operate with such intense, protective architecture? The clinical reality is that traumatic intelligence is almost always rooted in the early developmental stages of childhood. Many INFJs grew up in unpredictable environments where they had to grow up far too fast. They survived by constantly adapting to the emotional instability, hidden anger, or unspoken tension of their caregivers. To stay safe, their young brains were forced to develop an extraordinary level of emotional intuition and hypervigilance. They turned their natural sensitivity into a highly advanced security system, reading the room before a word was even spoken. If you recognize these 6 habits in yourself, understand this vital truth: your mind is not broken. You are not too sensitive, and you are not crazy. You are simply rare. Your isolating habits are not flaws. They are the beautiful, resilient shield of a soul that learned exactly how to protect itself when the world was simply too loud. If you are watching this right now from your quiet sanctuary, perhaps wrapped in your heavy blanket, looking for answers in the dark, know that you are not alone in this vigil. There is an entire silent tribe out there just like you. Leave a comment below with the word Casulo to let us know you are here with us in the silence. Subscribe to the Rare Axis to continue decoding the hidden architecture of your mind. Thank you for watching, and until next time, protect your peace.